So, countdown?
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready? Good morning. Good morning, neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles. Welcome to the 2020 Congress of Neighborhoods digital event. We're really excited to be with you today. Thank you. Our numbers are growing as we are getting started here this morning. The neighborhood councils of the city of Los Angeles are rising together through challenging times. As elected or selected leaders to your neighborhood council, or serving on a neighborhood council committee, or as an active stakeholder seeking to improve the quality of life in your community, the added challenge of day-to-day activities and living is beyond anything we've ever experienced. Thank you for joining us and being here today. Holding the Congress in a digital format is all new to us, and we look forward to bringing you some great education and networking, even though we're not able to meet face-to-face. To give you an overview of our time this morning, we will be featuring some key speakers who really want to connect with neighborhood council leaders, including our mayor, Eric Garcetti. In addition, we will feature 4 key segments: elections, equality, budget, and outreach. These 4 segments rose to the top of the list as the most important topics that will be facing us as we get through this pandemic. Following these 4 topics, we offer an expanded time for networking, time where you can connect with fellow neighborhood council leaders, city staff, and others. Now, today's event would not be possible without the activism, energy, and support of fellow neighborhood council leaders. We've met monthly. We didn't stop. We continued to meet throughout this whole time. We've met weekly, and most recently, we've met daily. And in the last couple of days, we've met hourly, just to bring this event to you. So please thank these neighborhood council leaders who you will get a chance to interact with today. And you will also see their list of names later on. They are truly dedicated, and they are here assisting us as we go with this live event today. Special thanks to Dunn staff Freddie Coupe-Ames for his dedication to the Neighborhood Council Congress, as well as all the Dunn staff working with us today who are behind the scenes to make this event a success, including General Manager Raquel Beltran. Thank you to Mayor Garcetti, City Attorney Mike Feuer, City Controller Ron Galperin. The Neighborhood Council Alliances are a big part of neighborhood council life, so we thank them for their dedication to the neighborhood councils and the work we do. And to our BONC commissioners, we thank you. I know that was back a little bit, but you'll get to meet many of them today as well. Special thanks to the neighborhood councils that have voted funds to support the Neighborhood Council Congress. I want to let you know that the registrations today with the highest number of neighborhood council leaders are Wilshire Center Koreatown with 14, Porter Ranch with 12, Echo Park with 11, Empowerment Congress West with 11, Greater Wilshire with 11, West Hills with 11. Thank you very much for encouraging your neighborhood councils and getting such high numbers to be here. But really, thank you to all 99 neighborhood councils who are represented here today as well. Neighborhood councils who voted support for the Congress today: Olympic Park Neighborhood Council, Winnetka, Northridge East Neighborhood Council, Valley Village, Encino, Lake Balboa, Del Rey, North Hills West, Central Hollywood, Palms, Northridge South, Empowerment Congress North Area, Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. We couldn't do this event without their support. At this time, I would like to introduce our General Manager, Raquel Beltran. We met her for the first time at last year's Congress. Since then, she's visited many of our neighborhood councils, but her visits were cut short by the pandemic. We are grateful for her tireless efforts to keep neighborhood councils on track so we can function and carry on in our work. And now I would like to pass this on to Raquel. Thank you.
Do we have Raquel?
Muted.
Terrific. Thank you for unmuting me. Much appreciated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
To the Honorable Mayor Eric Garcetti, Madam City Clerk Holly Wolcott, Controller Ron Galperin, City Attorney Mike Feuer, Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, President Eli Littman, Vice President Ray Regalado, Commissioners Len Schaefer, Maggie Derek Quiroz, Queen Vo Ramirez, Debbie Wiebe, and Joy Atkinson. Esteemed colleagues and fellow general managers, Congress of Neighborhood Planning Committee Chairperson Cindy Cleghorn, and members of the Congress of Neighborhoods Planning Committee, to the Neighborhood Council Alliance and budget advocates and budget representatives, to the numerous guest speakers, panelists, and presenters in today's event, and to the 99 Rising Together Through Challenging Times City of Los Angeles Neighborhood Councils. Greetings, welcome, and thank you. I'm sure we all agree that there is indeed much to be thankful for. We are here, safe, and as well as can be expected. It gives me great pleasure to join you all today. I want to thank Mayor Garcetti not only for his support for the system of neighborhood councils, but for his steady leadership over the past months. It has been challenging for all of us to navigate our professional and personal lives during this global pandemic. It would be more difficult were we to have a lack of confidence in our leaders. I have appreciated Mayor Garcetti's decisions and offer my continued support to keep Angelenos safe. Listening and learning is how I would describe the past year, using diverse methodologies and context-specific data to respond to the city's neighborhood council's needs and concerns. For almost 20 years, Empower LA has served as a space that invites all Angelenos to meaningfully engage within the city of Los Angeles' political system. The system of community spaces that Empower LA supports is large. 99 neighborhood councils organized into 12 regions covering 502 square miles that make up the diverse and large city of Los Angeles. Collectively, we all aim to support vibrant, localized, successfully operating civic spaces. Neighborhood councils exist to cultivate deep civic belonging and participation. They are places where all residents can serve as vested stewards of their own neighborhoods. You have often heard me say that we work in a triad relationship with the Office of the City Clerk and the City Attorney. This gives me an opportunity to thank my triad colleagues for their dedication to the mission of the neighborhood council system. During the current tumultuous political landscape of 2020, no one could have predicted the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and the widespread activation of civic affairs in the United States. There's no better example of my triad partners' dedication to you and the city than their having come together during the first month of the pandemic to find a way for councils to serve while observing stay-at-home protocols. Thanks to their creativity, neighborhood councils were able to invest over $250,000 in COVID emergency services, much needed services. Thank you, Holly, Petty Santos, Melvin Canales, Myra Puchin, and the funding division. And of course, thank you, Neighborhood Council Advice Division, Elise Rudin, Ruth Kwan, and Steve Huchin. To stay true to its commitment to vibrant and local civic engagement spaces, Empower LA embarked on a process to identify how to best support 99 diverse NCs, all who have their own set of unique bylaws, number of board members, and vary in their issues of concern. Empower LA has centralized community voices to identify the knowledge, skills, and support needed to effectively meet the needs of neighborhood council ecosystem, steering clear of a one-size-fits-all approach, and instead focusing on strengthening its relationship with each neighborhood council. The department provides operational uniformity in a system with considerable variation across councils. Therefore, assessing the system possesses challenges. Through careful decision-making processes, Empower LA anchored itself in neighborhood council voice in order to develop strategic, meaningful plans and services. Ask yourself, how does one anchor itself in NC voice and allow it to develop strategic and meaningful support plans and services? By listening and learning. We are cultivating a new type of open communication between neighborhood councils and City Hall. Our focus was on improvement. In fact, there were several collection points. The data allowed us to thoughtfully develop services and trainings responsive to NC voices. A meet and greet listening tour, neighborhood council survey, close to 300 respondents, led by Director Julian Antoline and the Innovation and Community Engagement team. Empowered virtual governance workshops and technical trainings with over 800 participants led by Director Semi Park and the Neighborhood Council Operations team. 7 regional outreach gatherings of over 500 participants led by Director Tom Soong and the Outreach and Elections Division. Empowered LA's signature equity survey with over 600 participants, 42% of the neighborhood council system led by Director of Administration Armando Ruiz and the administration team. Important insights were gained through the cycle of listening, learning, and implementing. Data derived from each implementation step set the foundation of major questions. This data inspired good critical thinking around assessing the unique conditions NCs are confronting, not just about the coronavirus pandemic, but beyond. For example, we transitioned to empowered virtual governance. When we did so, we developed an understanding about concerns related to individuals' capacity to confidently, successfully navigate technology. 27% of you reported having some economic hardship in transitioning to virtual environments. About a quarter of you reported feeling more nervous than confident about this transition. Neighborhood councils responded to this equity issue by participating in the carefully crafted empowered virtual governance trainings. At a rate of 57%, you told us that the EVG trainings indeed increased your understanding of considerations to take during this process. I'm pleased that there'll be opportunities to delve into equity concerns within the neighborhood council system. Neighborhood councils are the most localized municipal centered space for resident civic activity. It is reasonable to assume that we will need to take our place in the effort to examine how successfully we are addressing equity in this system. Our social equity survey showed us that concern around equity in the NC system is undeniable. Black and African American and Asian Pacific Islanders tend to feel more concerned about equity in virtual settings than any other racial groups. In virtual environments, females tend to be more concerned about equity and males tend to be more intensely concerned about technical ability. 3 issues surfaced categorically as issues of concern for you: housing, schools, education, arts, supportive services, and mental health. There will be many changes to the direct neighborhood council support in coming months. Director Mike Fong and the Policy and Government Division team will lead much of the policy and procedural changes with uniform and consistent implementation. Nonetheless, and even with budget reductions at about 30% and staff reductions about the same, we remain committed to our operating goals to improve and strengthen our direct neighborhood council support, improve City Hall's relationship with neighborhood councils to serve as strategic partners for neighborhood councils. Next month, we will release our public engagement handbook for departments. The companion training will support City Hall's interface with Angelenos at a ground level. Empower LA has demonstrated its commitment to develop the infrastructure necessary to listen, learn, and respond to the needs and concerns amongst all neighborhood councils, allowing us to make decisions authentically anchored in NC voices. In fact, just yesterday, we received notification that we received approval from the Funds for Shared Insight Foundation to launch a Listen for Good initiative, which will help us design a perpetual feedback loop. We thank the city's Innovation and Performance Commission for their matching fund support for this grant. During my closing remarks last year, I borrowed a quote from Albert Einstein: "Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." We have hardly done that. We have and will embrace this thought moving forward with the expectation that great results will be realized. We have come to understand that the new normal people are waiting for to arrive is actually here, and that change will happen every day. We are ready though. We have proven that because you see, the pandemic will end. And what we have proven together is that when it is all over, we'll still be here. The system of neighborhood councils is no longer an experiment. It is here, ready to serve for another 20 years. I want to greatly thank all of my colleagues in the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, all of you for the work that you do, and thank you for the opportunity to serve. So continue to seek, share, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So at this time, I'd like to move along to introduce our mayor, Eric Garcetti, who will also welcome us here today. And he's been a very, very busy person, to say the least, I'm sure. And we're very grateful for your being able to be here with us and to address the neighborhood councils of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mayor.
Of course. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. Can everybody hear me okay? I always got past the beginning. Thank you. I got the sign off from our city clerk, so she's the authority on whether your Zoom is working. Hi, Holly. And thank you, Raquel, so much for your presentation and really a great sweep of history as well as our ambition of the future. And to you, Cindy, and the entire Congress, this is my 10th Congress. I've been at every single one, but for 19 years, we've been gathering in City Hall. So it's a little bittersweet. Sweet to be with you, bitter that we can't be face to face the way we usually are. But like so much that's changed this year, this gathering is adapting. And as we adapt to the new reality that we're living in this year, there's also some silver linings of increased participation, no long commutes, things start a little bit more on time. It is something in which I hope all of us, even though we're only in 2 dimensions right now, can take this moment. We take it as a moment of punctuation, even as we struggle with the challenges that we face, the biggest crises of our lives as a city collectively. It is still a moment for us to strengthen this civic fabric that you all embody. And you do it for free, you do it out of your heart, you do it from your soul, you do it with intelligence, you do it with risk-taking. We don't always do it perfectly, and we don't always do it with everybody getting along perfectly, but by and large, that's what democracy is about, working it out and figuring out a way to build the Los Angeles that long after any of us have these titles, we'll be proud to look back on and saying that we had a small hand in creating. So thank you. And as I've loved touring the city during the pandemic with you, going to all the alliances, talking to folks from Plan Check to folks in all the geography of Los Angeles and the neighborhood councils, the Sustainability Alliance, of course, and New LGBTQ Alliance. So many of you have been coming together to not only come up with big plans for the future, but to respond to the present. And I want to thank you. The neighborhood councils are like the Swiss Army knives of Los Angeles. You're the laboratories, not only of democracy, but of assistance, helping folks out, going and figuring out who all the seniors are in your areas and delivering food, setting up ways to make sure that there are people with special needs or low-income individuals who have supplemental help straight from neighborhood councils where you live. This has been a marvelous coming together at the same time that we've had to face these challenges as well. And I'm really excited about today. We're going to talk about the budget. We're going to talk about equality. We're going to talk about housing and homelessness. We're going to talk about sustainability. Make no mistake, this is the toughest year of our lives. Just at City Hall, this will be the hardest budget ever, which is why, thank God, we've been for 7 years squirreling away money in the largest reserve fund, twice as big per capita now as in 2008. But this is a bigger cliff we're falling off than in 2008. And so there's some excruciating decisions. These have certainly been the heaviest decisions of my life in terms of the weight of them, but they've also been some of the clearest ones to lead when it came to testing or shutting down parts of the city, of making sure that we went into our skilled nursing facilities so our seniors' lives were preserved, looking at the way that we had folks who didn't have symptoms available to take tests, the first city in the country to do that in any widespread way, and so many other firsts, from closing the racial mortality gap for African Americans with COVID-19 to opening up the biggest testing center in America at Dodger Stadium. We're showing ways on the health crisis, something that's not the city's prerogative usually or jurisdiction, but we didn't care. We have marvelous volunteers. We have an incredible fire department. We've got people like Gene Soroka running the Port of Los Angeles, the busiest container terminal in the Americas, who became our chief logistics officer and is now giving our hospitals PPE at cost that we were able to secure through his brilliance. So we have an amazing team. And then when it comes to the economic dislocation, while we will never have the resources of the federal government and we pale compared to California, we're putting everything we can into helping small businesses, landlords and renters, making sure that we have assistance directly for those who are written out of federal assistance, like our immigrant neighbors who you could be married to or even the US citizen child of, and you got zero money while your neighbor got assistance. And supporting, of course, our neediest, those essential workers whose safety and livelihoods we need to protect. But it's bad. There's no way to sugarcoat what will be the toughest budget year of our lives. We're going to be furloughing. I'm actually furloughing more than what I'm asking the rest of the city to do. We have cuts in every department. And we're going to make sure that we get through this with the basic services that you depend on. Know that. But in the meantime, I hope you'll continue to raise your voice with mine to say, Washington, do your job. In May, we had one house of Congress pass the next round that would have assisted local and state governments who are on the front lines. And it's been 5 months and they're playing politics or going to golf courses or taking a vacation or giving Americans a 30% pay cut with unemployment cliff. While their pay isn't cut, they don't have to worry about their livelihoods. We need them to pass it. We need them to pass it now so that we can see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for our city employees, our city services, and our city economy. But I'll bring it back down local now that I've editorialized nationally. You know, there's a few things I wanted to kind of frame for you that are very exciting that we're going to be sharing with you today. Because in the midst of that one crisis of COVID, which is both a health and economic crisis, we saw two other crises that predate COVID come to the forefront. Most recently, of course, we see it with climate change. We see the skies that were choked with soot. We see it with record high days. Woodland Hills, I'd say congratulations for setting the highest temperature in our history. But as I depressingly read in the New York Times, think of this summer not as the hottest summer in the last century, but the coolest summer for the next century. And you have an idea of just how much work we have. But I'm glad that Los Angeles has been leading on this with a Green New Deal, with a way of reducing. We actually reduced, somebody was saying at Metro yesterday, LA is doing a terrible job when it comes to emissions. And I actually had to point out the statistics that we reduced in a single year our emissions by 18%, the largest we think of any city in the world. And we're going to keep doing that, whether it's at the port, whether it's through our transportation, whether it's by shutting down gas plants that emit difficult and carbon emitting emissions. We have to do the work now that will give some hope to our children and our children's children that this earth and this city will be habitable. So today we're going to be sharing with you a Green New Deal toolkit. And I want to thank Lisa Hart and Ernie Hidalgo. I want to thank the Sustainability Alliance, my Office of Public Engagement and of Sustainability for really putting together an extraordinary how-to toolkit for things that you can do at the neighborhood council level, because it literally will take all of us on an individual level, at a neighborhood level, and a citywide as well as global level. Many of you know I chair two different associations of cities and mayors. One for the United States of America, over 430 mayors that I put together in a group I founded a few years ago called Climate Mayors, that I now have bipartisan, tripartisan support, independents, Republican and Democratic mayors that have pledged to implement the protocols of the Paris Climate Accords. Globally, I'm the chair of C40 cities, which is the 96 largest cities of the world. Think about it this way, they're 25% of the world's GDP through cities, and ours the third largest of those urban economies. Also taking pledges, they're called Deadline 2020, of where we will get halfway to our carbon neutrality by 2030, and then 2035, and then all the way at 2050. These things are absolutely critical if we're going to have hope of being able to live here, to sustain here. But we're doing everything from looking at shade as an equity issue, looking at new ways to pave our streets, looking at how we plant trees, looking at how we get our power, looking at how we can create green jobs. And so there's guidance for you for planting trees and native plants, purchasing an electric vehicle and going solar in efficient and affordable ways, growing your own food and cutting back on food waste, certifying green businesses in your neighborhoods, improving air quality across the board. So I encourage you to take these as they're intended, not as web pages meant for show, But as we launch those later today, they're really guideposts for actions to hold yourself accountable, as I've held myself accountable to you with our sustainability plan and Green New Deal that has specific deadlines, specific dates, specific thresholds, of which we've hit 95% of them on time or early, and they have not been easy. And familiarize yourself with the 5 zeros: zero carbon electricity, zero carbon transportation, zero carbon buildings, and then of course zero waste and zero wastewater, 100% recycling of our water. I was very pleased to see Governor Newsom's bold move this week. It might sound scary to some, but for all new cars to be zero emissions by 2035, and for some of our vehicles like port trucks even earlier, it's necessary. I've been an electric car driver since 1997. It's, you know, over 20 years this technology has been there. We have to now continue to push that forward and make sure that we have those clean skies we saw at the beginning of this pandemic every single day potentially, because the biggest source of pollution still is our vehicles. Second, we have the crisis of racial equity and of justice in this country that is much older than climate change. It is the second sin, as I call it, of this country after the first sin in the treatment of our Native brothers and sisters. To see in this city, where we know the national statistic that if you're born into a Black family, you have 1/10 the wealth of a white family. But did you know that the statistic for Black families and for Mexican-American families too in Los Angeles is 1 to 100 in terms of the wealth, nearly 1 to 100, about 1 to 92. So you have more than 90 times more wealth in an average white family in Los Angeles than a Black or Mexican-American family. You know, these aren't things to feel bad. I don't want to reduce the wealth of our Anglo families in Los Angeles. I want to raise the wealth of our Black families, our Mexican-American families, of anybody who's left behind. And yes, of course, this has been brought to the fore because of policing, but it isn't just about policing issues. This is about health. This is about wealth. This is about economic opportunities. This is about internships. This is about the quality of the connections that we can provide for young people who grow up in one zip code who dream of being the next Steven Spielberg, but don't know where to start with programs that we're doing like our Evolve Entertainment Fund, or who want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but they're growing up in Pacoima and they don't have anybody who works in a tech company. So we're doing that with Pledge LA to make sure that tech companies in Los Angeles lead on that and so much more. We have to get this right. We can't miss this moment. And so I look forward to hearing what neighborhood councils are doing and what we come up with to make sure that equity is at the forefront of everything we do. And you all know my executive directive 27 that I put out this year is all about that. Every department now owns equity, has to have a racial equity plan, just as we had the gender equity plans. And we'll really look now at a way that we can make sure Los Angeles leads internally with our operations and externally. How we can have not just police responding 24/7 to things like mental health emergencies, continue to invest and double down in prevention and intervention programs that have helped drive crime down alongside the heroic work of police officers, even more than just police can do on their own. Look at those hard questions of what sort of things we do with traffic stops and where we're putting police officers doing work that they don't need to be doing, and where we can make sure that people's civil rights are lifted up even as we continue to drive crime down in our city in these historic lows that we have. These are the exciting opportunities, even in the midst of the pain that we carry this year. And I hope that all of you will embrace it, run to them, and show LA as a leader. I'll close on this because I know you have so much to discuss today. You know, I'm nearing the end of my time in Los Angeles city government. I have a little bit under 2.5 years left as your mayor. Thanks to voters, I have an extra 1.5 years to serve. I served for 12 years as a city council member. It has been the honor of my life to serve alongside neighborhood councils. I've seen you grow up. I feel like one of your parents, and now you're kind of graduating and going off to college. This is a moment for all of us to think hard too about who you want to be. And know that you have an ally in me for those big discussions. And one of the things that I've started talking to Council President Martinez about is constituting another charter reform commission to look at our charter, to make sure it's updated and modern. Many of you have brought ideas of things you'd like to see changed in terms of neighborhood councils that would require a charter change, to look at the way that we do everything from financing our campaigns to the ways that we need to make sure that we can do things like give racial equity programs a head start, which are prohibited right now by the city's charter. We need to do things that keep it modern and keep it moving and keep you empowered. I've always said a council member knows better than a mayor what's going on in his or her district. a neighborhood council member knows better what's going on in his or her neighborhood than a city council member. And of course, somebody who lives on a block knows the very best of what experience they're going through. But looking back in those key investments on the toughest issues that we're making now, whether it's our heroic fight against homelessness that we will not back away from, and we will not let the federal government and state back away from, finally, as we're getting some resources in there, whether it's sustainability, which is the fight of our lives, or whether it's the idea that we can look back and one day maybe our children will be able to see a city in which everybody belongs in an equal way. Those are the things worth fighting for, and those are the things that neighborhood councils will lead. A more resilient city through Ryland and all the ways that we can make sure we had a little wake up. Mother Nature always reminds us that we're an earthquake country. Whether it's the long range planning that we've done to plan a better city and step up and build the housing that we're going to need to make sure that our grandchildren can afford to even stay here, or whether it's just the dreams that you have about your own neighborhood, what you want it to be, maybe walkable to a public transit line, to a place to shop, to outdoor dining that stays here long after the pandemic. This is a moment not just to respond and not to just to rebuild, but to reimagine. And so I leave you with that. Close your eyes and reimagine what your neighborhood and what your city can be. And that's what we must push for, my friends. And that's what you can count on me to be alongside you to do. Thank you and have a wonderful Congress. Back to you, Cindy.
Thank you. I understand that there's a opportunity for us to grab that picture that we so historically want to try to do.
I
Do
think
we
there's
have
a video first, right? I think
there's also a video that the mayor wanted to share with us. How do we want to proceed with that?
I don't know. I'm going to toss it over to my team. Angie, give me a thumbs up. Are we doing the video next?
Yeah, so we can do the video. No, let's do the picture first, and then we'll do the video.
All right.
Great.
If you want to
Thank you.
lead it, or Cindy?
What's that?
If you, Cindy and Freddie, if you guys want to lead the picture, we can do the screenshots right now first.
Hey, everybody
Okay.
tidy up and look at your camera. Don't look at each other. And thank you to our commissioners. I see Commissioner Atkinson. I know there's other commissioners that are here from BONC. We really appreciate the great work that you do as well.
Thank you.
All right, is somebody going to take it with their computer,
Yeah.
Angie?
Yes, currently we're trying to get screenshots of everyone here.
Great.
Okay.
And there are a lot of people here. One moment.
Thank you for doing this.
Screenshots.
Thanks.
This is the new digital version.
Yeah.
We're also trying to enable video for those that are.
You guys are now watching the wizard at work in his laboratory.
So Mayor Garcetti, thank you for being here and thank you for all your time and attention and all in all the help you give to neighborhood councils throughout the city. We truly honor you and appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Back at you. And as I said, I'm happy to keep in this pandemic and keep Zooming with all the alliances and try to I can get to more places more quickly than ever before. It's easier than driving across town. So keep taking me up on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
All right.
Okay, I think we're ready for the
The video.
The
Yes.
video. All right. Video being shared.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you. You too. Thank you.
you.
Great working on the Green New Deal Toolkit Action Guide that neighborhood councils, community organizations, businesses, and individuals across the city can use to take action to save our city and our planet. A group of neighborhood council and community leaders partnered with the mayor's office to put this guide together for all Angelenos. I'm inspired by the mayor's Green New Deal and climate agenda. The increase in fires shows how important it is for everyone to take action immediately, and the neighborhood councils have a critical leadership role in that effort. Even though we're living through COVID at this moment, there are actions like virtual trainings that can be implemented right now. Each guide has informational resources and in some cases, ideas for financial assistance to carry them out. Here are a few of them to give you a taste of the toolkit.
I'm Jemiah Hargens, the founder of Crop Swap LA here in South LA. I'm also on the mayor's Green New Deal Toolkit Advisory Group. I'm excited to share with you that my favorite action guide is the Urban Agriculture Guide, because not only does it show you how to grow food on your own, but how to share it with those nearby you.
Hola, mi nombre es Olvia Díaz, soy parte del Consejo Vecinal del Norte East. He vivido en el este del Valle de San Fernando por muchos años. Me gustó haber trabajado con la guía de trabajo porque aprendí a cómo tener espacios verdes en nuestra comunidad. Gracias por haberme brindado la posibilidad de ser parte de ese grupo.
Hi, my name is Terry Saucier. I'm on the Tarzana Neighborhood Council and the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. The Toolkit's action guides are an excellent resource. They're full of great information and tips to implement sustainable strategies. And I'm looking forward to sharing those with my fellow board members and our community. I encourage you to do the same because we all deserve a greener and more livable LA today and in the future. Thanks.
You can find the toolkit at planned.lamayor.org.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to, this is a day of networking and education. And next up is our city attorney, who I know has been with us as well in all these years of Neighborhood Council Congress. So thank you for being here. And it's on to you, our city attorney, Mike Feuer.
Hi, thank you very much, Cindy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific, terrific. It is great to be with you this morning again. As I've said at previous Congress convenings, it is just remarkable to see the evolution of neighborhood councils from the days when I was on the city council and creating neighborhood councils for the first time in the 5th Council District and then through charter reform. So this is a remarkable event every year. I want to speak just for a few minutes about what I always hope we can talk about, which are the biggest challenges facing our city and how our office is rising to those challenges. First, just a little news for folks. As you might have seen in the news or heard this morning, our office, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, has joined with cities and counties across the country and nonprofits like the Urban League and League of Women Voters to challenge the Trump administration's efforts to prematurely cut off census counting and reaching those hard to count communities. As you probably know, after COVID struck, the experts at the Census Bureau had in mind a long-term project. They were going to finish the outreach and the counting process at the end of October and then submit data to the president next year. It's really important here in LA, of course, we rely on having an accurate count for hundreds of millions of dollars of education and transportation, other funding, and for representation in Congress. Unfortunately, at the beginning of August, the Trump administration said, no, we're going to scrap that plan and cut off the census at the end of September. We went to court and we just won a preliminary injunction from a federal judge ordering the Trump administration to eliminate its September 30 cutoff. So for everybody who is listening to this and actively involved in your communities, be sure that people know that they can continue to report to the census. We need that reporting desperately here in Los Angeles. Our self-reporting rate is still about 60%. We have to do better than this. And so I'm urging everybody who's watching to reach out to your communities wherever they are and contribute to getting people to get counted. But in the meantime, in court, we're going to continue to fight to extend the counting and outreach period. You should know that just yesterday, the Trump administration filed an appeal and is trying to stop the order. It's moving to stay the order in federal court. I think this case is probably going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We're going to fight with our teammates across the country every step of the way. On other issues, by the way, tied to the census, I do want to say is the issue of redistricting. And of course, we are using census data to redistrict. It is the time for those of us in office to appoint an individual to serve on the redistricting commission. You may know that I was the first person to appoint. I appointed former Supreme Court Justice Carlos Moreno to be my representative on our redistricting commission. He's going to do a great job. And importantly for all of you who are participating today, what I have said to Judge Moreno, and he's agreed to do, is to stand by certain principles in that process. And he's committed to stand by principles that I've asked for that include keeping communities of interest together, making our districts as compact as possible, and ignoring where incumbents live. That's not the point. The point is to keep communities of interest in the same city council districts. Now on COVID, as you know, our office has been perhaps the most active public law office in the United States on COVID on many different levels, from going after people who would scam folks by offering fake test kits or fake cures, like vitamins or preventions that aren't going to work and are going to make our society more dangerous. We went after price gouging, both online and in brick and mortar stores. Our office joined with the DA to create a joint coronavirus task force. We've engaged in efforts that go beyond the kinds of consumer protection efforts that we're so famous for. For example, we created a program with the DA, the LAUSD, and the grocers called Behind Closed Doors, because we knew that a few months ago, reports of domestic violence were dramatically declining, yet we doubted seriously that domestic violence was declining. Instead, we were concerned that people weren't reporting because they were trapped with their abuser at home. And so we created this program to make it easy to get information to those people. And then, interestingly, after our campaign started, those reports began to increase again. I mean, basic things like knowing that someone who's being abused can simply text 911, not just call, so it's less conspicuous and safer for them to do. We even, when it came to COVID, held a virtual town hall focused on the fact that when the Trump administration refers to this as the Chinese flu, our Asian American neighbors have been targeted with a dramatically escalating number of hate incidents. We want to counteract that. And this virtual town hall helped get the word out that we're going to stand by folks and that they should report these hate incidents, and we're going to be with them and prosecuting as needed. And of course, we're also enforcing the mayor's safer at home order and all elements of those orders, including recently, you might have seen we've been going after folks at party houses because those big parties are super spreader possibilities if we don't make sure that people honor safer at home. I want to talk just for a minute or two about a couple other issues before I conclude. One is issues of housing and homelessness. I weighed in early on with the Chief Justice of California Supreme Court when the thought was that they were going to curtail the eviction moratorium. And again, I've been working with our congressional leaders in Washington, D.C. All of us need to assure that funding from Washington gets to tenants so they can get it to landlords so that no one is adversely harmed by a pandemic that's no one's fault. Here locally, we're going after owners of buildings that would transform rent-stabilized properties into short-term rentals. You might have seen we just won a major victory of preliminary injunction against one such owner in the Venice area. And regarding homelessness, I don't have time to discuss homelessness in great depth today, but let me say we are desperately trying and we need to find a balance. On the one hand, we need to be urgently, intensively focusing on getting services and housing for people who are homeless. Everybody who is homeless deserves the ability to get housed and get the services they need. At the same time, there needs to be balance on our streets. There needs to be, as long as there is homelessness in our city, we need to assure that all of us, housed and unhoused alike, are safe and are protected, and that our public spaces are safe for everybody. And I'm going to continue to work toward that. Let me conclude with the fact that our office, as you know, when it comes to neighborhoods, dramatically expanded our neighborhood council, our neighborhood prosecutor program, working with neighborhood councils and other leaders in communities. As we've done that, we've created major projects in neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles. And even in the COVID pandemic, those projects are moving forward to, for example, combat illegal dumping in South Los Angeles, to combat the stealing of packages from front porches in the San Fernando Valley, and to grapple with homelessness at Union Station and at LAX. There is so much that we have in this city to work on together. And even though I said I conclude with that comment, let me actually add one more point. There are, of course, these urgent, essential calls for racial justice, to get rid of systemic racism, to infuse reform into our institutions, And we've always been on the cutting edge of criminal justice reform in my office. We're working with hundreds of members of my office and elsewhere, people otherwise in the communities that we serve, on further criminal justice reforms. Many of you are involved, for example, in our neighborhood justice program, which is an alternative program that presents people into opportunities to turn their lives around instead of incarceration. And in response to the protests, we convened, and we're starting to hold next week, conversation among those who protested and police, small business owners, and others. We need to be listening to each other, conferring authentically with each other, but listening to each other so that we can move forward and take concrete action to make our society more just. And in the meantime, heal and reconcile, because that's what we need right now in our society. So those conversations are going to be starting imminently. And I'm hopeful that all of us working together can make it through this very challenging year and see that our next year is our best year. Thanks very much for allowing me to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, City Attorney Mike Feuer, and thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it very much.
Always. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. So I know that many of our neighborhood council leaders know this, but I just want to remind us that the purpose of neighborhood councils is to promote more citizen participation in government and make government more responsive to local needs. And that's part of the charter. And, you know, this is very important as we now know that we're going into neighborhood council elections in 2021, and it's just getting started. And we're very grateful that our city clerk, Holly Wolcott, is here with us to help get us kicked off into neighborhood council election season. And Holly, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. I want to thank the entire Neighborhood Congress team for inviting me here and all neighborhood councils. And I am going to apologize for any wonkiness of my screen. I am in my room, so I'm not the most technologically efficient, so getting things to work the best. But what I really appreciate is your title this year, and that's Rising to the Challenge. So everything we do is about making the best out of the circumstances we find ourselves in and getting the job done. And clearly the Neighborhood Congress has been able to do that by bringing this session to you virtually. And I think that's wonderful. And I'm glad to see you all here. And I very much appreciate being invited. So the first thing with the city clerk's office, we have a variety of business models. You know, we staff the city council meetings. We handle payroll and personnel for the mayor and council, CLA, and a couple of other departments. As you know, we do your neighborhood council funding. We have a records management, a systems division, and then of course we do business improvement districts. We do the NC funding. But what I'm here today to talk to you about is, of course, the neighborhood council elections and talk about rising to the challenge. So where we found ourselves this summer without a crystal ball of knowing what next year was going to be like. So as we were planning for 2021, we looked at all the facts that were in front of us, and also the amount of funding we had in the budget. And we thought, what was the best use of these funds to make the best elections for you that we possibly could. So at that time, we made the difficult decision to go completely vote by mail. And there have been questions as my team has been out in the community, you know, could we do both, or could we change on a dime at the last minute, you know, if the health conditions in the city get better. And the reason we had to make the decision in mid-September or by mid-September was when you have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of resources, you have to decide how they're dedicated. So we either had to go out and start recruiting large venues and all the supplies and staffing to staff at polls, or we had to dedicate those resources toward vote by mail. The programming, the different resources, the different individuals that would be needed to process the ballots, and candidate filing is the same either way, but both the ballots and the applications and the voter registration system, you know, is a huge undertaking. From a safety standpoint, in my heart, well, it was difficult. And knowing we have lemons, the best thing to do is to make lemonade. So while vote by mail is probably not everybody's choice, I had to go with that recommendation to council because of the safety of the individuals in the city of Los Angeles. I couldn't have vulnerable populations at polling centers when I didn't know what the circumstances would be like. It's also difficult to recruit right now large venues that are closed, and we don't know what it'll be like in the spring. So I made the recommendation to council in mid-September or by mid-September to go with vote by mail. And so that's where we are now. We do owe the committee and the council a report back that I had hoped to have released by today, but it still wasn't in, I'm still editing it. I want to make sure that it's clear and concise and it makes sense to everyone. But it does lay out how both the Empower LA and the city clerk will approach things such as outreach. And there are questions about, you know, could we open polling centers as well at a later date? And that would require more resources. In the meantime, we've done a lot of outreach. My team and Empower LA have been out at different congresses and different neighborhood councils, hearing from you on how to address some of the challenges that we may face, such as, you know, making sure the unhoused have an opportunity both to be for outreach and to vote. So we have asked for an additional allocation of 55 grand for that, just to staff different the unhoused locations and voting boxes, things such as that sort, to make sure that we can outreach to those who don't have computers or those who don't even have a place to call their home. So where are we? As in previous election cycles, each region will have its own election day as we move into the spring. So it will be similar in that respect, that we'll go region by region. And the reason we can't do it all in one day, because I know that question comes up all the time, there's 99 different elections. That means 99 different ballot models, 99 different sets of applications, 99 different sets of ballot types, with each neighborhood council maybe having multiple ballot types. It's just not something we can process all at the same time. And I know the response to that often is, well, that's a city clerk problem. It is a city clerk problem, but it's also a resource problem. So we plan it in the way that we know that we can provide the best services to you. So we'll have a election day for each region, but we're moving it to Tuesday. And we're moving it to Tuesday because people are used to voting on Tuesdays in a national election. But because it's vote by mail, instead of only having one day, you will have 4 weeks in which to cast your ballot. So it'll give you a greater opportunity to decide, check out your candidates, and to mail your ballot back to the city clerk. So there will be a registration period where we accept either your paper registration to vote. We'll accept paper, we'll accept fax, we'll accept email. So those will go out to each neighborhood council according to their timeline. Now, at one of the breakout sessions that you had today, which I highly encourage you to participate, Renee McDade and Mike Lecterich will go over in detail and give you a chance to ask any questions that you may have about your region, but they'll they'll be able to go into greater detail regarding the timelines that we have. Here's what my office has done in preparation for the 2021 neighborhood council elections. They've convened a neighborhood council stakeholder group, and they met between January and May to provide feedback on the election timeline, bylaws, the challenge process, and election day operations. They talked about vote by mail voting and candidate filing. My staff has reviewed 95 different sets of bylaws for any amendments to board seats, candidate qualifications, and voter requirements. We have updated the election handbook and election timeline to reflect the vote by mail processes and deadlines. We attended a Homeless Alliance meeting in August to gather feedback and brainstorm with leaders on the best practices to serve the unhoused and those currently facing housing vulnerabilities. Along with Empower LA, we have hosted 5 different regional feedback meetings in September to present our current vote by mail election plan, which includes reaching stakeholders without internet access or a mailing address to include them in the candidate and voting process. We have surveyed over 2,000 neighborhood council stakeholders in partnership with Empower LA, requesting input on the vote by mail process and voter accessibility, along with gathering input on best practices for outreach to Angelenos. So to go into a little bit more detail on neighborhood council filing, as a result of the feedback, the candidate filing period of each region has been extended from 30 to 45 days. The neighborhood councils asked for more time for candidate filing, and we were able to increase that by 15 days. Candidates wishing to run for office can submit an application through the user-friendly online candidate filing portal, which has been updated, or via a paper application. The portal will include improved screen images, encryption of personal information and documentation, application progress and status updates, and it will be accessible to stakeholders 24/7 during the application period. And of course, my staff will be available to assist stakeholders over the phone and through email. Regarding the vote process itself, the voting period has increased, like I said before, from 1 election day to up to 4 weeks for each region. The vote by mail application period will start 60 days prior to each election day, and it will end 7 days prior to each regional election day. That means you have to be registered 7 days prior to the election in order for us to get you the ballot and for you to be able to return it. For the application submission, there'll be an online vote by mail portal. There'll be a paper application that can be emailed or faxed, and a photo of an application can be emailed or faxed. So it means you can send it via your mobile phone, should that be your desire. We have a potential citywide locations for voters to pick up and drop off paper applications. And that was done again to try and reach the unhoused or those without computers. Regarding neighborhood council challenges to the process, in response to recommendations received from the work group and stakeholders, an independent grievance panel will be deciding body to review and resolve any election day challenges. The panel makeup will be of 2 neighborhood council stakeholders and 1 city clerk representative, and our office will provide panelists with guidelines to use when reviewing the challenges. Once you have received your ballot and returned it to us, the ballot itself must be postmarked by election day. So it must be postmarked by that Tuesday and in our office by Friday. And we check the PO box multiple times during the day, and especially on that last Friday, both on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we check the PO box multiple times. As far as the results, that of course will also be done virtually. and links will be provided to each neighborhood council, and information will be provided to each neighborhood council 7 days prior to your election, so you know where to go to survey or to view the tally if you wish, because we'll live stream it. So the links and detailed instructions will be posted 7 days prior to the tally. The tally will be live streamed the next business day. So it will always be on a Wednesday that the tallies are live streamed. And unofficial results we expect to be released 7 days after the election day. So the following Tuesday. And official results will be posted after the challenge period. As some of you know, but maybe not everybody knows, the council approved an ordinance which changed the minimum voting age to 16 for all neighborhood councils. Voters must be 16 years of age to vote on election day or through the mail any 4 weeks before election day. This ordinance also provides each neighborhood council the opportunity to have at least one youth board seat. At this time, as I talked about earlier, there will be no voting locations on election day. However, on election day, we will have ballot boxes available in each neighborhood council so that if you do not wish to mail it, but you wish to drop it off, there will be one, conveniently located in your neighborhood council. And hopefully we'll be able to staff that if we get the additional resources. Renee McDade and Mike Lecterich will be presenting, as I mentioned earlier, during one of the breakout sessions today. And they are the experts in this field, so I hope you'll bring your questions and your interest to them and your ideas. We can always do things better, and I'm open to ideas and how we can make the best use of the resources that we have. Again, I want to thank each of you for participating. It's my pleasure to be here. It's my pleasure to do the absolute best we can in bringing you the neighborhood councils in neighborhood council elections in 2021. And even though these are not the ideal circumstances, we will rise to the challenge and we will rise to the challenge together. So thank you, and I will turn it back to Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Holly. We really very much appreciate it. Yes, all of our neighborhood councils are all different and all unique. That's what it's about, as well as everyone involved in our communities as well. And we really appreciate you being here and for all the hard work that the city clerk's office is doing for neighborhood councils. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Commissioner, Joy Atkinson, who's going to take us into a very important topic, equality in status, rights, and opportunity. Commissioner Joy.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Again, I'm a technology deficient here.
You're wonderful.
This session, a very brief session, I must say, has to do with equality. And equality is in status, rights, and opportunity. The recent demonstrations that we've incurred during this past 6 months has centered around racial discrimination affecting African American people. But as we begin to discuss this issue in our very diverse communities in Los Angeles, we're coming to understand clearly that discrimination occurs along lines of ethnicity, religion, ageism, and sexual orientation. And how do we come to believe in the humanity of all people? As the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment provides direct support to the country's largest system of neighborhood councils, it must embrace the racial and social equity in its administration of its duties, which means working positively through neighborhood council system. In a positive tone, 2020 brings us a new opportunity to fix some of these issues that have been so prevalent in our communities for such a long time. Racial equity is important to discuss and highlight because the NC system is expected to reflect the social economic characteristics of its Angelenos. And as such, NCs, volunteers must do everything in their power to be sure that fairness is equal at all levels of their work. During the networking session a little bit later, we will discuss some of the department activities that have and could continue to bring positive changes to the social equity arena. But right now, we want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the city right now. And so I have, it's my pleasure to have on a panel this morning our Deputy Mayor, Brenda Shockley, who is the Chief Equity Officer and is in charge of implementing the Mayor's Executive Order 27 on racial justice. I also have our own department. Every department in the city of Los Angeles has an equity officer, and we have one in the name of Gibson Inyabura, who many of you know from his work in the Valley. We have our chair of our South Los Angeles Neighborhood Alliance, Thyris Mason, and a couple of board members from 2 neighborhood councils, Thile Thatch from Van Nuys Neighborhood Council, and Moses Rosales, who's chair of the Empowerment Congress Southeast, to kind of give their opinion about some of the things that probably need to be discussed and focused on. So I will, I also have Chelsea McElry, who is with the Zapata King Neighborhood Council, to come on a little bit later too. So I would like to start off with Brenda Shockley to give a little brief uptake on what the Mayor's Executive Order 27 is all about. And by the way, happy birthday, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Okay, you're okay now. You were kind of frozen there for a sec.
All right, can you hear me? You can?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Good morning, and good morning to the Neighborhood Council Congress. Congratulations on being able to have the flexibility to continue to do your work, move online, and not let this pandemic interfere with what is so important to this city. Thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. I have been Mayor Eric Garcetti's Deputy Mayor for Economic Opportunity since 2016. In June of this year, the mayor also appointed me as Los Angeles's first Chief Equity Officer. My new role as Chief Equity Officer will be to helm the city's work to bring racial equity action plans to life, coordinate with different departments, lift up the efforts of the new Civil and Human Rights Commission, and ensure equity remains a key prism for our programs and policies, that it be a core value of the governance of the city. I will also be continuing my role as Deputy Mayor for Economic Opportunity, because really it's very, very almost impossible to have opportunity without equity. The Executive Directive 27, and I won't belabor it because the mayor gave a good sort of synopsis, but I would like to emphasize that the directive includes naming the executive, the racial equity officer for every department. The departments themselves not only have developed equity plans, this Executive Directive 27 was actually executed by the mayor in June, and yet already, because of his urgency, already all of the departments have turned in both their draft and now their final plans, and my staff in the mayor's office, we're now analyzing it and preparing it to present to the mayor. Part of this is very important because we're anticipating that the city will be in a position to revisit, and the mayor mentioned having a charter reform commission, because we're looking at the very real possibility of the repeal of Proposition 209, which eliminated and prevented the city some 24 years ago, along with all the cities in the state of California, from considering what was regarded as race-based programs. Proposition 16 is on the ballot. While we were all very, very concerned, obviously, and very committed to making our voices heard and our votes counted, we must go down ballot. It's more than just the presidential election and vice presidential election. There are critical propositions on the ballot, and the one that we are really pushing in relationship to equity is Proposition 16. Proposition 16, we really need everyone to recognize that importance and to encourage their community to be informed and to vote on those propositions when they also are voting for the national election. I'm not going to belabor it. This has been so fascinating for me to listen to the work. I really enjoy working with Raquel Beltran. I've had working sessions with all of the neighborhood servicing departments. They've come in with really wonderful ideas because our system, what we're planning to do, the framework of it is very simple. And truly, it's really based on the success of the gender equity, which was the Executive Directive 11. And in that, it's quite simple. The mayor believes in basics, and this is basics. We have a three-part strategy. First, we'll establish a baseline, which is what we're doing now, to figure out where we are. We are adopting racial equity as part of the governance, and that is Executive Directive 27. And then understanding that the entire city, internally, externally, neighborhood councils, residents, staff, that to live and thrive together, as the mayor so eloquently said, we have to work together. And as Mike Feuer says, we have to learn to have the truthful conversation, that we also have to understand about reconciliation. We have to address racial healing. And from there, not only can we transform, but we can indeed and imagine a city, a state, a nation, and indeed a world where racial equity is a core part of everyone's value system. Again, thank you for having me. I look forward to continuing to work with Commissioner Atkinson, with Raquel, with all of the neighborhood councils, and we'll happy that next year we should be able to report significant progress within the city in terms of our goals as described in Executive Directive 27. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate the remarks. As was mentioned under the executive order, every department has its own equity officer. And so ours is in the form of Gibson Inyabura. I hope I didn't just butcher that name too badly, but Gibson has been a member of the DUN for a while, and I believe represents the department in the Valley. So Gibson, why don't you talk about a little bit about what you have to do as social equity officer for the department?
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, just to introduce myself, my name is Gibson Yambura. And I just wanted to say thank you very much, and it's great to see everyone this morning. And as the department has been providing direct support to the country's largest system of neighborhood councils, Empower LA has a long tradition of embracing racial and social equity in the administration of duties. I'm excited to say 2020 brings new opportunities to continue the department's efforts in a new era of activities and programming. I just want to touch base and reiterate, racial equity is important to discuss and highlight because the ANC system is expected to reflect the socioeconomic characteristics of Angelenos. As such, neighborhood councils are expected to achieve equal opportunity of NC volunteers, whether they're elected, selected, or appointed, participating in neighborhood council activities. And as our outward-facing department, our duty is to serve all 99 neighborhood councils and support and provide the tools necessary for NC board members to succeed as grassroots and volunteer locally elected officials. And I just wanted to touch base on some of the efforts the department has been undertaking. One thing I definitely want to mention is since the fall of 2019, Empower piloted a series of trainings that provided staff with an understanding of how to operate in a fair, equitable, and accessible manner. The department retained the services of Keep Beyond, a collective using nationally renowned curriculum anchored in the belief that performance is enhanced when an understanding of anti-oppression is provided. Lead consultant YK Hong provided 3 sessions to the department staff in September, November, and in 2020 as well. Also want to thank you, the mayor, after signing Executive Order 27, as mentioned. The department responded by administrating an SEIE survey to board members on the view of social and economic disparities in the communities they serve. The neighborhood council are represented by over 1,800 locally elected board members. The survey was distributed between July 6th and July 6th, 2020 and June 13th, 2020 to the emails of record with the department. The survey was available in 4 languages, which is English, Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. The department achieved a response rate of approximately 42%. I just wanted to thank everybody who completed that survey, and also want to thank all my team members who led the survey, and I'm glad that we were able to get such a large response. And I also want to touch base on how the department has experienced a string of staff departures between 2019 and February 2020. And most of the employees leaving the department were able to find opportunities in other city departments with upward mobility opportunities Empower LA could not provide, given the size of the department and classification structure. The department supported them in their transition, and I'm confident in their experience providing varying levels, direct neighborhood council support enhanced their service to the city of Los Angeles. And I just want to say the department developed a strategy to create opportunities to diversify its workforce when filling these vacancies. We've established goals, considered possible organization options that could help us achieve the goals, and modify the position descriptions accordingly. We initiated a recruiting process with the support of the personnel department that engaged community and neighborhood council leaders in our efforts to identify and recruit potential candidates. We were unfortunately unable to fill these vacancies given the hiring freeze and subsequent controlled hiring program. We will resume the efforts once the city's financial position is improved. Also, I just wanted to highlight the City of Los Angeles Department of Neighborhood Empowerment provides a leadership program designed for youth members between the age of 14 to 24. And the department also recognize that an attempt to address the issues of the racial divide, and that is why the department has been pushing the data literacy program, which is a signature program that we established in partnership with the mayor's innovation and budget data team. The goal of the program is to provide neighborhood council leaders with the tools necessary to make data-driven decisions. And lastly, I want to say Empower LA established the neighborhood council virtual governance protocols, which also helps bridge the divide. It's a signature program that we designed and we built that provides guidance to neighborhood councils on how to hold public meetings in a virtual meeting while adhering to the state of California, County of Los Angeles, and City of Los Angeles decrees during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is just one of the few things our department has been undertaking, and we want to continue to be in partnership with our neighborhood council board members, the mayor's office, and our fellow departments and our colleagues in our effort to bridge the racial divide. And I just want to say thank you very much, Commissioner, and have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Gibson. I also want to put a plug in for our 11:30 or whatever time it's going to start for the networking, where we're going to be able to discuss these issues a little bit more about what neighborhood councils can do to deal with this racial justice, social equity. And this is just a brief overview of what people are thinking right now. I want to introduce now the chair of the South Los Angeles Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, under which there are 15 neighborhood councils in South LA. And Cyrus Mason is the chair of that particular alliance. And of course, in that area, discussion, I'm sure, on racial equity has come to the forefront. I know that I bug her a lot on trying to get information about what's going on in the area, and she's been quite helpful. So it's my pleasure to introduce Cyrus Mason.
Good morning, everyone. To the Congress of Councils Planning Committee, thank you for creating this space and having the vision to make this happen this year. To the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, thank you for your leadership. And to Joy Atkinson, thank you for having me here this morning. When I think of the time that we're in right now, these socially challenging times, I call it a race, but I use that as an acronym. We are reimagining, we are taking action, we are creating change in the name of equity. So that is the race. But this is not a dash to the finish line. This is a marathon. And we must engage with care, we must engage with compassion, and we must recalibrate the lens through which we look at the systems that we serve and strive to dismantle any systemic racism that is embedded. In South LA, the prevailing issue right now, well, I won't say prevailing, but what is really critical for us is the issue of gentrification, which leads to displacement and inequities in our community. And so we can dive into that a little bit more as we go into the networking section, but those are just the critical points that the seeds that I wanted to plant this morning in everyone's mind to prepare you for our conversation we're going to have later. I look forward to seeing you all, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cyrus. I appreciate you. We have the chair of the Empowerment Congress Southeast, Moses Rosales, who I wanted to bring a different flavor, a little bit of expansion on the issue. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Moses.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, just thank you so much, Joy, for including me in this conversation. And the Congress neighborhoods, thank you guys for having me as well. And planning committees and everyone that had to do with putting this together. We appreciate your hard work and everything you guys do. This day, we're talking about, racial equality. For me, today's racial equality and inclusion efforts have to be flipped on its heads, because I feel that we have had in the past decades, elected officials that have been fighting for this, yet we still have this problem. There's something has to be happening that it's not going right. And the only thing that I can ask myself and just think about is that we must focus on transforming our homes and our communities first to battle this, because it's real. So I'm open to having the conversation and having more dialogue about how we can come together as a community and focus on this racial equity.
Thank you. I wanted to bring into the conversation Thiele Thatch, who's on the board of the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. I actually asked Thiele because she's an old friend, has gone through a leadership program that I run at the campus at USC, but also is in a neighborhood council where she's the only African American. And I think it's important on the relationships that she's been able to develop in that environment and what that neighborhood council has done to sort of implement Executive Order 27 by some of the community impact statement that they have submitted on behalf of police funding. And I wanted her to talk about that as a way that neighborhood councils can weigh in on what's being done in the city of Los Angeles. Uh-oh, are you unmuted?
Okay. The ability to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Joy, for the opportunity to speak today and to be a part of this amazing event. Thank you for all of the elected officials present. I definitely don't have enough time to recognize every single one, but I am excited to be here as a member of the Van Nuys community, to be here as a person who lives in Van Nuys, who is focused on equity. As a Black woman, there are two Black people on the committee. One is a Black male and one is a Black woman, which is me. And what's interesting and what I'd like to share during our networking time is just the impact that one person can have. We were able to discuss equity and our community impact statement, but I truly believe it was because of this Black woman's voice that we had more of a focus on equity. I believe that myself and some of the other diverse members in Van Nuys bring a different diversity lens that we're able to really look at our community in an equitable way. So I look forward to sharing more about what I've done in my day job. I am an equity and HR person. And again, I just think it's an opportunity for those who, have day jobs to bring your talent to your community through the neighborhood council. So thank you so much for this time. I look forward to the networking session.
Elaine, could you explain real quick about, especially for new people who are active in their neighborhood councils, about the community impact statement and what you guys did with regard to police funding?
Sure. So the community impact statement was something that we are able to create through as a neighborhood council. And on September 2nd, we met as a committee and created a motion that was approved to move forward the recommendation that our council board write and submit a CIS, community impact statement, to oppose SB 1120. Oh, I'm sorry, that was for a different community impact statement. So basically we write different community impact statements. So that one is for another community impact statement around racial inequality that's happening in housing. So the one that we did was to support the Black Lives Matter movement and to look at racial equity within the police system. So I have it in front of me. I didn't know how much time I had. I wanted to read it, but are you interested in hearing?
We can talk about it in length at the networking session.
At the networking session, okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Thiele. I just wanted to make note that as neighborhood councils, especially in South LA, I think we really need to look at the social impact statements that as neighborhood councils can be submitted to the city on different issues. And that's sort of how you get your voice heard. And oftentimes we don't really submit them in the number that we should be submitting them to cover certain issues. So that's why I wanted to bring up the importance of it. I wanted to bring up a couple of issues that we will discuss in the networking session, but that some of the things that's happening with our board of neighborhood commissioners and what's happening at the department for you to kind of think, for neighborhood councils to kind of think about when we go into the networking session. I wanted to mention that we in January passed a leadership policy. The Board of Neighborhood Commissioners passed a leadership policy, which now probably must include diversity training. We were having a leadership, developed a leadership policy where folks that are running for neighborhood councils sign a declaration that they know what they're running for before they decide they're going to run. We want to initiate a training for new board members right after election. So that's being worked on right now. So those are sessions where we might be able to implement a little bit more about social equity. Some neighborhood councils, and again, we'll be discussing this a little bit later, have already set up and are organizing diversity committee or social justice committees, and we will be discussing that. I want to ask when we get to our networking session to the neighborhood councils, should we have more geographically diverse town halls to discuss this issue? Should we get together in different areas? to discuss different issues? Would it be helpful to do it on an ongoing basis? And then we want to talk about exerting more power on city departments. How do we do this? Sometimes I think we get bogged down in the administration of our own neighborhood councils, and we're not really interfacing with city departments on what we should be doing to improve our communities. And I see the racial inequities as being twofold. Some are very systemic, deep-rooted discrimination issues that have to be handled by government, by ordinance, by federal law, state law. But some of our diversity problems have to be solved among ourselves, among neighborhood council people that simply are willing to talk to each other and be civil toward each other and discuss the differences. So we have two levels, you know, the neighborhood where we can work together very closely and where we have to work through government. And I wanted us to keep that in mind as we go into our session at 11:30. And I think that's about, is Chelsea McElry from on here from, by any chance, from Zapata King Neighborhood Council?
Yes, I'm here.
I would love to get an opinion from you about what's going on and what some of the things you've been discussing about at Zapata King, Chelsea.
Okay. Oh, now or in the afternoon session?
Well, we can do it more, but I just wanted to know, can you briefly kind of give an overview and then I'll give it back to our chair.
Okay, so for Zapata King, we've been talking about how can we shed light on police brutality in our boundaries of our neighborhood council. And that's pretty much our main discussion right now.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I know there's other neighborhood councils that are probably interested in that too. So without further ado, I think we briefly, quickly kind of went over what's going on in the city and what neighborhood councils need to be doing. And I look forward to the networking session that will be following this session. So with that, I give it back to Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy. Outstanding. Wonderful. Thank you very much. You know, it was said earlier that there are 1,800 plus board members across the city and neighborhood councils. And up to this point, we've heard about how, you know, the department has worked to assist us in being able to function with, you know, EVG protocols and support from the department, and the mayor with his encouragement and the new toolkit coming down, which is another opportunity to get involved. The city attorney giving us more updates on the latest things that are going on in the legal side of things, and the city clerk with kicking off our election season for neighborhood councils. And there's so many different, you know, ways that people can become involved, and in this working together time that is so critical and so important as we in ourselves struggle through this pandemic and getting you know, moving along here. So this is a great day of the networking and education, and thank you. You know, so far it's just been so exciting, and I'm hoping that everyone is getting a lot out of it. So thank you, Joy. And we're going to next hear from our city controller, Ron Galperin.
Hello, I'm Los Angeles City Controller Ron Galperin, and it's great to be joining you for this year's Congress of Neighborhoods. And while I wish that we could be together personally, it really means a lot to be coming together virtually as we are doing now, because we're living in unprecedented times and tough times for so many people. Now more than ever, it's crucial we come together, that we join in rising together through challenging times. Year after year, I've been proud and so enjoyed meeting and talking with you at our community gatherings, especially being a neighborhood council member myself before becoming city controller. Thank you so much for all you do to serve our communities, especially at this time. As controller, I serve as the elected watchdog, chief accountant, auditor, and paymaster for our city, monitoring and reporting on our finances, making revenue projections, analyzing, recommending, sometimes criticizing, and partnering. The coronavirus, as we all know, has brought about a decline in various city revenue sources. And more than 6 months into this, it's clear that we are going to have an extended road to recovery. While revenues are down, expenses, as always, continue to rise, especially with coronavirus-related spending. These struggles are not unique to Los Angeles, but we at least have diverse revenue streams, a relatively robust treasury, and modest reserves at this time. We've also received significant federal dollars, but those are unlikely to keep coming. Until our economy comes back, however, we will undoubtedly experience strain in our ability to provide as many services as the city would like and be able to, and as much as people deserve. Of course, protecting the welfare of Angelenos and doing so equitably must remain our primary concern, and we'll have to seek to do more with less. I encourage you to attend today's sessions, and especially on budget and finance, to learn more about the state of our city's finances and how this impacts your neighborhoods. Together, we will work to rise to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Controller Ron Galperin. At this time, I'd like to introduce the co-chair of the Budget Advocates, then Jack Humphreyville, who will introduce members of the Budget Advocates and beyond. Thank you very much, Jack, for being here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure which budget advocates are online right now, but I'm sure there's a number of them because we've been telling them they have, it's part of their responsibilities that they're supposed to stuff the ballot box a little bit. But one of the people that's on this who helped me produce it is Julia Moser, who's is a budget advocate, and she helped produce this. I would also give her a plug in that she's been she's put together 2 programs that have been well received for the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council that are available to you on Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council's Facebook page. But one is Budget 101, where she was with Ron Galperin, and the second one was, I guess we'll call it Civic 101, which was about the city council and just how the city council works, and both of them were excellent. So I recommend them to you. I don't recommend Julia to you because I don't want to lose her services. She's been unbelievably valuable to the neighborhood council and to the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. In terms of going ahead here, I don't know whether we can put up the screen, the presentation that we sort of put together, but never, here we go. Thank you, Freddie. Next page, please, Freddie. Yeah, this is, we call this the real city budget. And essentially, one of the questions, first question is, why did the city declare a state of financial emergency? First of all, we're looking at a budget deficit this year, not balanced, by the way, of about $400 million, and that's probably if we're lucky. The city tells you $200 to $400 million. And the reason for this is that the virus has impacted the economy, and the 7 economically sensitive taxes, such as the hotel tax. Not too many people are visiting LA today, and the sales tax. Those are some of the big ones. And as a result, we're probably, these revenue streams have just dried up. The second reason is that we have a structural deficit for the city, and a structural deficit is where where expenditures rise faster than revenues, of about $750 million over the next 4 years. This is the result of the budget busting contracts, labor agreements that the mayor and the city council approved back in October that blew about a $1.6 billion hole in the budget, $1.6 billion over the next 4 years. As a matter of fact, next year we're looking at a budget deficit pre-pandemic impact of about $225 million. The other reason we have a little bit of have an emergency is because the reserve fund that the city has put aside is below the minimum levels, and we're not sure. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's probably $200 million below the desired level. Next impact, Freddie. Or next impact. Thank you. You know, basically, what are the impacts of the budget deficit, and what is, you know, how the city intends to balance the budget? First and foremost, the city's major expense is personnel. That consists of salaries, medical benefits, pensions, workers' comp, all sorts of issues. And so, in order to reduce expenditures to save money, we're talking about talking about furloughs and possibly layoffs. Both of those are not very popular with the city's unions, so we could have quite a bit of disagreement on that, as we've already seen in this year's budget with regards to furloughs. But what's the net effect is we're going to basically have what I call a service deficit. And a service deficit can be public safety, you know, assuming that they furlough or furlough some of the police and firefighters. It's less money for the environment. You heard Ernie talk about that a little bit earlier. You know, it's going to be impact the homeless situation, affordable housing, the streets and sidewalks. One of my pet ones is the toilets in the park that Ron Galperin pointed out a couple of years ago that really haven't been addressed. And another hot button for mine is the urban forest. You know, trees are apple pie and motherhood as far as I'm concerned. And I think, you know, it's not only, you know, and this is throughout the city, not only in our parks, but our medians, but throughout the city. The other thing that we might have is increases in fees. Those fees might be, you know, in particular, I'm thinking about the trash collection fees, which they tell us do not cover, you know, that are on our DWP do not cover the costs. Next slide, Freddie. Yeah, issues, you know, things that we're going to talk about in the networking session are, you know, are listed here, and I think there's about 10 or 11 of them. You know, the hot ones for me are the city's fiscal integrity, and that includes the budget deficits, includes the structural deficit that, you know, I mentioned that it's looking at $750 to $800 million over the next 4 years, assuming no impact of the virus. And it also involves what I consider a real issue is what I'll call intergenerational theft. That's right down by the bottom. And intergenerational theft is where we dump billions of liabilities on the next generations of Angelenos, which I think is inexcusable. Freddie, the next one, please. So what are some of the solutions? Well, as I mentioned, you know, this is going to be, multi-generational. And, you know, it's going to take 25 to 50 years to work off, let's say, the pension liability or the deferred maintenance budget of $10 billion. But last year, the neighborhood council budget advocates came up with a program called Radical Transparency. And there's a number of issues there, including 3 that were mentioned by the LA 2020 Commission that was set up by Herb Wesson, who endorsed their findings, but never saw the light of day at the city council. You know, there weren't even files that were, you know, council files were created. But one of them is a pension commission. You know, tell us what's going on and what are some of the solutions to it, as opposed to keeping it in a black box. My favorite was the Office of Transparency and Accountability to oversee the city's, see the city's budget in real time. And in very many ways, we've been fortunate to have Ron Galperin here, who, you know, sort of been our watchdog and done a lot of unpopular things. At least they were unpopular at the city council. I think we're also talking about multi-year budgeting, which is pretty commonplace in a number of governmental organizations. Another one, as we talked about, was open and transparent labor negotiation. In the past, the labor negotiations have been conducted behind closed doors. They're popped on us. This is what it is. There's very little time to, understand it. I mean, Paul Koretz was unbelievably less than transparent in the personnel committee meetings when we discussed it. So we have some issues there. The other thing about labor negotiations, if we enter into those, we need to be in a situation where they do not create deficits. Simple as that. This last one, it created a deficit for the current budget of about $200 million and blew a hole in the budget, in the projections for the next 4 years of about $1.2 billion. what are some of the solutions? Well, people will say, well, elections, let's throw the bums out. That's easier said than done because, very many ways, you're fighting the machine. And the machine is, the existing city hall, as well as the public sector unions who have a lot of money and a lot of people to support their candidates. The other one is ballot measures. And I think, in very many ways, we've been successful at saying no to the city hall in that if they're going to ask us for money, they need to clean up their act. They need to have reforms, whether it's pension or budget balancing measures, things along those lines, transparency. We defeated Prop A. I think, it was Prop A in 2013. Also, the LAUSD proposition Measure EE for the $500 million parcel tax went down. So, that's the one way we might be able to, affect change. And then, of course, there's the neighborhood councils. One of the things, Freddie, could you go to the next one, please? Yeah, that's what the budget advocates are about. We represent 99 neighborhood councils, and I think there's a couple of community councils that we also work with over in, I think, Westwood and the Palisades, or Brentwood and the Palisades. Each neighborhood council appoints 2 budget representatives, and if they don't appoint budget representatives, that responsibility falls to the president of the neighborhood council and the treasurer. We divide the representatives up into 12 sections, 12 regional sessions, and each one elects 3 budget advocates. So that means we have 36 budget advocates. And what are we? I think we're a resource for the neighborhood council. We're a knowledge base. I think we're able to give you honest answers. Quite frankly, the only honest answers we get are from Ron Galperin, and he's done that at some political cost. Just look at the report he put together on the homeless situation and the $500,000 cost per unit. The other thing is that we can also be an advocate for let's say what things that might be important for you. One of the things that's it's sort of important to me is funding of the Department of Recreation and Parks, where it got slammed for about $80–90 million a year under the full cost recovery program, just like the library did. But then there was a ballot measure to restore the library's funding. I think that's for me one of the things that I think would be sort of interesting. Finally, Freddie, could you go to the next chart? The next chart is something I love that everybody hates. But it's a spreadsheet just basically outlining what I call the structural deficit. And if you look at this, you go to the far right-hand column, and you'll see under cumulative, you'll see 765 million. That's a negative number. That's the 4-year cumulative deficit that the city's administrative officer is projecting. I don't think that's adequate because I think there's going to be raises in between. We need to put $250 million a year into the infrastructure that's not being done. The pensions are, they're relying on overly optimistic return assumptions of 7%. This hayseed in Omaha, Nebraska thinks 6% would be good. That's a guy named Warren Buffett, who's probably been the best long-term investor known to mankind, or at least the United States. So when you put all those together, we're looking at a budget deficit of $4.3 billion over the next 4 years, and that's $1 billion a year. And that's going to be part of the subject that we're going to talk about in the networking session, which will follow. That, as well as a number of other questions that we had before. If you go to the budgetadvocates.com website and go to documents, this will be on the true budget situation will be. There's a link to these things, and that might be very helpful when we talk during the networking session. So we look forward to having you join us. We will have Ron Galperin, so we can pepper him with lots of questions and get lots of answers. We'll have some other budget advocates on there, as well as myself. So thank you very much, and Cindy, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Yes, and thank you to all the budget advocates for being here. It's great to see you. You're looking good, and thank you for all your hard work. I know this is it's a huge undertaking, but you see, there's something out there for all of us to get involved in, and it's Really, really important. Next up is Tony Wilkinson. Tony is on our Congress Planning Committee. He is going to open us up into the next segment, which is outreach. Tony.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm sitting here along with everyone else in the room with great interest listening to what's going on and remembering that this whole program, this Congress entity today is rising together in challenging times. And the most important thing that we're facing is an immediate, we've got to have elections and nobody knows that we exist and we're not allowed to talk to anybody. And combined, and then we are about to have a session. Don't worry, there are ways to do outreach, but I want to do a little transition from what I heard here, because I think it's really important that with everything going on in the world and in our city, we need to understand that this is a new day, and neighborhood councils are intended to reflect their communities. And the elections are the only time that we have to make certain that our neighborhood councils really do reflect our communities, perhaps more than they have in the past. And there are two things that are really important about that. The first is, whichever neighborhood councils think, I need everybody's help in the room. If you're not in the neighborhood council, you're in this too. We're all going to rise together. Some neighborhood councils may think that there are 15 people on a board, and that's all there is. Let me tell you, every neighborhood council needs more than 15 people or whatever. They need at least twice or 3 times that many active. So consider running for your neighborhood council. If you don't get a seat, don't go away. Show up and sit on committees and stay active, because this is how we make the neighborhood councils more diverse. The second thing is that, and I really thank Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley for her idea, because I start out as a business economist. We are going to discover, I'm from a low income, diverse community in the Northeast Valley. We are going to realize that lots of our racial equity and social equity issues are about economics. The problem with homelessness is a classic example. Our prices keep going up, our rents keep going up. The way Cyrus Mason talked about the problem of gentrification, every low and medium income area in the city is now under, we are perhaps the poorest big city in America. So we are going to discover that in our mission to go and take the charge that we have to make racial and social equity in the city, we're going to, as neighborhood councils, going to deal with boots on the ground economics. So I am really, whatever networking session you go to, I'm asking you to bring this idea with you, that we need to diversify our views and we need to put economics and economic issues for everyone in our viewpoint, whatever we're coming from it. And then when we go to this election, it's urgent. November 13th, candidate filing opens for the first neighborhood councils. November 13th, that's just a little more than a month away. So and the answer to doing this in a pandemic is a combination of new stuff, new technology, whether it's social media, videos, whatever. Yes, we can connect that way. And old technology, old-fashioned things like direct mail. Every door direct mail, you can go out there and hire a carrier to do on a carrier route, have to do everything that every mailbox he delivers to, but it may only cost you 30 cents a piece between the postage and the printing. If there are 1,000 people on the carrier route, it costs you a little bit more than $300. So there are realistic ways that we can do this. And that's what the next session is about. It's how to take the old technology, the new technology, and let's remember, put it together in a clear strategy to beginning with urging people to run. Candidate selection is the most important thing about an election. Get good candidates, they'll get the voters for you. So start at the beginning, and please, listen to the overview that you're about to get and consider going to the networking session on outreach. So I'd like to turn it over to Anna Marie Holman from our Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. And thank you very much for being here, because we're here to provide answers, not just hand-wringing.
Thank you for the introduction, Tony. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anne Marie Holman. I currently serve as Public Information Officer for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Prior to joining the department, I was a board member of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, and I chaired the Land Use Committee there. I'm fortunate to have taken part in every Congress of Neighborhoods since 2015. Besides serving a few years on the Congress Planning Committee, I've also taught here on topics such as social media, digital outreach, and public relations for neighborhood councils. The Congress of Neighborhoods is traditionally the NC system's largest event of the year. Because of that, it was an enormous undertaking for this year's Congress Planning Committee to pivot to this virtual version of the event. Huge congratulations to them for pulling off this incredible achievement. While my favorite part of attending the Congress each year is seeing each of you in person, it's an honor to be part of today's networking session on outreach in a pandemic. That's going to start at 11:30 after this segment is over. I'll be joined there by the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment's Director of Outreach, Thomas Sung, who is also heading outreach for the 2021 Neighborhood Council elections. This panel is going to be Q&A style, and it will be moderated by panel curator Adriana de la Cruz. Adriana is from Mar Vista, and she also served as outreach coordinator on this year's Congress Planning Committee. Except for Tom and I, this panel is entirely made up of current and former neighborhood council members who are there to share their expertise on the outreach tools and techniques that work best for promoting neighborhood councils. They'll also share their insights on how to do outreach for specific neighborhood council needs, including land use and emergency preparedness. That these folks have this background is key because, as all of you who have been or who currently are on a board or committee are well aware, neighborhood council outreach presents some very unique challenges. Your very existence as a neighborhood council system is a recognition that in a city as diverse and as far-flung as Los Angeles, there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. And just as NCs were created to be customizable to the communities they serve, so should NC outreach plans be tailored to the needs of each council and to the needs of each stakeholder group in each LA neighborhood in order to be effective. But I've noticed one thing. Though I have over 15 years of experience in public relations, marketing, social media, and branding, I find that when it comes to doing outreach or advising on outreach for neighborhood councils, my own personal NC experience is just as much, if not more, of a source of inspiration and insight as my years working in commercial PR and marketing. That's because neighborhood councils have unique challenges when it comes to doing outreach, to building relationships with the people they serve, and to creating awareness, challenges that a commercial enterprise simply wouldn't face. For example, in most industries, you target an audience with specific interests or who fall within a certain age range, ethnic group, or income level. In most industries, you only target people who feel friendly toward the organization, product, or program that you are promoting. In government, though, your target is literally everyone, every member of the public that you serve, and so it's extraordinarily broad. And the same message or the same method of delivering that message does not connect with everyone. On top of that, neighborhood councils must enact this sort of broad-ranging, multi-channel outreach within very narrow geographic confines. So neighborhood council engagement has to be at once very broad, yet also hyper-local. Besides these challenges that NCs always face when seeking to engage their stakeholders, you all face some additional challenges this year. First of all, you're currently conducting business in an entirely virtual environment. Secondly, you're on the threshold of the first ever vote by mail neighborhood council elections. And third, the widespread calls for systemic societal change have made the need to respond to stakeholders and offer them an avenue for meaningful change-making participation more urgent than ever. That's why I think it'll be worth your while hearing from and learning from the experiences of the neighborhood council leaders who make up today's Outreach in a Pandemic panel. If you join us, you'll be able to ask other neighborhood council members what outreach techniques worked best for their own council and why they were a success. In addition to today's panel, I'd also like to briefly highlight some upcoming opportunities to learn about or provide feedback on neighborhood council outreach. First, as you see here, we have 3 outreach webinars coming up in the next few weeks on video production, social media and other outreach tools, and public relations. This slide shows all the dates. All 3 events take place in the evening, and all 3 are free to attend. You can learn more about these classes and register at the link shown here. I'm going to paste that link into the chat right now, but it will also be shared in the follow-up email you'll receive from the Congress team after this event is over. Can we go to the next slide, please? There are also 2 opportunities in early October for you to weigh in on a couple of topics that will have an impact on neighborhood council outreach. First, on Tuesday, October 6th, you'll hear the first public presentation and discussion of the social media policy that the city attorney's team is developing for neighborhood councils. This will happen at the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners meeting that day. Again, at the tiny link I just shared, that has details for this meeting. That link is tiny.cc/NC events. At that link, you'll also find info for the second event that you see here on this slide. Thursday, October 8th, my department joins the city clerk's team for a presentation to the city council on our outreach and administration plans for the 2021 vote by mail neighborhood council elections. That will be at the meeting of the City Council Committee, which oversees the NC system, the Health, Education, Neighborhoods, Parks, Arts, and River Committee, also known as HENPAR. May we go to the last slide, please? Now, finally, I noticed that we have the pleasure of having many neighborhood council stakeholders, as well as members of nonprofit organizations, joining us here today at the Congress. So I'd like to extend a special invitation to each of you to join us for the 2021 Neighborhood Council elections. Be an organizational outreach partner or run for office yourselves. If you'd like to learn more, please contact us at empowerla@lacity.org for more details. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And huge thanks for the leadership that all of you have shown to your communities and to this city. I'll see you in a little while at the outreach panel.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie. Thank you very much. You know, I get really excited with these next couple of slides that we're going to share with you. And I already read one of them earlier, but I'm going to read it again. Our purpose as neighborhood council leaders is to promote more citizen participation in government and make government more responsive to local needs. And it's so important to stay on track with that and to really work with our communities and our government officials and our city departments. And we so need to stay on track with that. And, you know, when we do, we accomplish great things. And if we can go to the next slide, these have been well documented and took a lot of work to accomplish through the years in the neighborhood council system. We have a memorandum of understanding between neighborhood councils and the LA Department of Water and Power. We have early notification. Those are those planning packets that you get regarding land use applications when a application is filed with city planning, the neighborhood council gets a copy right away so that you have early notification and you can start to get to work on your outreach and getting involved. Community impact statements regarding issues in our community. You heard about those earlier, where neighborhood councils are submitting them more and more, and this is growing and very, very important and useful tools. We have a seat at the table. I know you've probably seen that neighborhood councils are right there on agendas in city council, in city committees, commissions, and where if your neighborhood council has taken a position, you can get 5 minutes. Well, sometimes the 5 minutes isn't really a true 5 minutes. We know that. We can work on that, but it's a seat at the table with up to 5 minutes at that meeting or hearing, so that you can relay to these bodies your position, your council's position. We have LA City budget representation through the budget advocates, who you heard from earlier. They work very hard in the city budget, which is another task for neighborhood councils to monitor the city budget. And we have the regional and citywide alliances, which has grown and are very effective in the issues across the city. Neighborhood councils have made major contributions and impacts in improving the quality of life in our communities. There's much yet to be done. I'm sure many of you can think of a lot of things that you would like to go back and continue on or get started on. And hopefully through the next set of networking sessions, you can get some more examples and ideas and strength to be able to continue with that. So there's much to be done, and we can do it by working together, which is the purpose of our Congress of Neighborhoods, to share our successes, ideas, experiences, and learn from each other. The neighborhood councils, we have 99 neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles, and we have them displayed here. You're all here, one from each council represented today. Congratulations, and congratulations to the outreach team with the Congress Planning Committee for making that possible. It's a huge accomplishment, and we're grateful that you're participating here today. And Freddie, you'll be next after this.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honoring those who we've lost. The Congress of Neighborhoods honors the passing of neighborhood council leaders and individuals who have made a significant contribution to the neighborhood council system and their communities. Bill Hopkins, Granada Hills North Neighborhood Council and SoCal Prep Foundation. Cindy Sauer, Sun Valley Area Neighborhood Council. Ron Ziff, Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. Pat Carroll, Central San Pedro Neighborhood Council. Bobby Trantafello, Canoga Park Neighborhood Council and West Hills Neighborhood Council. Betty Hawkins, Arbor Gateway North Neighborhood Council. Ann Wallum, Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council. Jan Brown, Panorama City Neighborhood Council. Taking a moment to recognize those that we have lost, and honor them. And now we'll be doing to connect with us, and Tony will have his audio recording coming up.
Thank you for joining us. This is the first online event of the City of Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Congress. The main session, starting at 9 a.m., was a quick tour through the world of community engagement with city government. Next up are 7 networking sessions. Each will focus on a single topic. 4 will cover topics discussed in the main session: neighborhood council elections, equality and social justice, the true city budget, and outreach in a pandemic. 3 additional sessions will cover sustainability, homelessness, and city programs. Each networking session will be held in its own Zoom meeting. All 7 sessions will run at the same time. Links to each of these sessions were sent to you by email after you registered for this event. All 7 of these links also appear on our website at ncongreslla.com. You are welcome to join any networking session that interests you. If you are joining by telephone, each session has its own Zoom number. Every networking session will be recorded, including your video and voice. The recording will be available to the public. Please understand this before you enable video or ask a question. Unlike the morning webinar, networking sessions are designed to give you great opportunities to ask questions and to hear differences of opinion. Please use the raise hand function to ask a question. The chat function is also open to everyone. You can use chat to network with each other and to exchange contact information. Since the chat is public, please use discretion in the information you share. If you are a member of a neighborhood council board, please do not discuss any business which may come before your board in a future public meeting. Like the morning session, these networking sessions are educational. They are not official meetings of a decision-making body. Everyone is welcome to attend. However, everyone is expected to be courteous in interactions, whether in chat or on microphone. Abusive behavior, spamming the chat, or posting commercial messages will cause a moderator to remove you from the meeting. Please have fun and enjoy the networking session you choose. We hope to make a recording of all the sessions available at a later date.
Thank you so much, Tony. And now we'll be going towards the acknowledgements section. The morning session, the Congress of 2020 would not be possible without the dedication and support of the following volunteers, city staff, and speakers. Thank you so much for attending this morning session as we transition over to the networking sessions of your choosing.
As everyone has an opportunity to move into the networking session of your choice, I have a few brief descriptions of these so that if you aren't quite sure what the item means, this might give you some more background. So it's not necessary to listen. If you know where you're going, please go and click on the link. It was either in your email message or it is on our website at nccongresla.com. Scroll down and you'll find live links to each networking session. But I'll just sit here and while this main session is still open, give you some background. All vote by mail neighborhood council elections. How would you like to face an election where there are no registered voters yet? Everyone must vote by mail, and many people do not know that your organization exists. How soon must you face this challenge? Candidate filing opens for the first group of our neighborhood councils on November 13th. Of course we can do this. Come to the elections session. Find out how neighborhood councils can partner with the city to have a great election. Ask election division staff and get the answers. Key dates for every neighborhood, election handbook rules, candidate do's and don'ts, registering voters with no computer, what every board needs to do before November 13th. Equality in status, rights, and opportunity. Social justice means different things to different people. The neighborhood council movement exists in the real world of disagreements. What can we do to bring peace, tranquility, and a workable program where we actually accomplish good things for our community? Come to the equality session and meet Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley, the city's first equity officer, and a wonderful spectrum of panelists. This session is designed and guided by Neighborhoods Commissioner Joy Atkinson, who lectures on leadership at USC and has the perspective of many years of working for social justice in Los Angeles. The true city budget. Los Angeles was in the middle of a pandemic. It faced the requirement of its charter for a balanced budget. The mayor cut funds from many areas, including police and the city's neighborhood empowerment department. The city council tweaked some more. That's the adopted budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. It started July 1st. Then the reality of economic devastation set in. Half of all the hourly workers in the city lost their jobs. Tourism vanished, devastating the hotel bed tax. The retail economy and sales tax cratered. The adopted budget could be hundreds of millions of dollars in the red. Next year could be worse. What is the true city budget? Come to this session and find out. The picture isn't pretty. It will affect every neighborhood. Outreach during a pandemic. Neighborhood councils exist to engage more people with government. It's a people business. We talk with neighbors one-on-one. We gather in public meetings. Then we are told that we can't meet in person and we can't gather in groups. It's devastating. Neighborhood councils face elections in 2019. Elections are how we bring new people to the public process. Elections are the critical way we make councils look like the communities they serve. Yet it seems no one knows about us, and for sure we are not allowed to talk to anyone. Or are we? Come to Outreach During a Pandemic to find out how neighborhood councils can reinvent their communications to fit the new world. It's a combination of new technology, social media, old technology like direct mail, and old-fashioned determination and hard work. Yes, we can. Sustainability. Sustainability may be the watchword of our age. In people and society, in economics, or in the environment, sustainability means that we do not steal from the future. We live in a way where people gain skills, families get stronger, and all have an equal chance. Where economic opportunities and incomes rise instead of shrink. Where the world and its resources are not diminished by our presence. Los Angeles was long a city that used itself up. Today, LA is a city that preserves resources while building for our future. This morning, Mayor Garcetti introduced a sustainability toolkit for local action. 10 books list 10 areas of action for neighborhoods. People from neighborhood councils worked with the mayor to create this toolkit. You'll meet them in the sustainability session. Look for a great conversation on how to address climate change and improve economics for all. Homelessness. Los Angeles has an intractable challenge with homelessness for a reason. Land and housing costs have been rising for decades, while the city's people get poorer. Los Angeles is probably the poorest large city in America. Add to that the fact that the city is a big legal target. LA gets sued and its smaller neighbors don't. Now stop and think how many evictions may soon happen because of job losses in the pandemic. There are no magic answers to the city's big problem. Like all big problems, though, little actions can chip away at the issue. We can work together to make good things happen for our unhoused neighbors. Come to the homelessness session to ask a deputy city attorney about legal issues. Ask leaders of service organizations about how the system succeeds and fails. Network with neighborhood council leaders who are trying to address the realities on the ground one by one. This big problem needs everyone on board. City programs for neighborhood councils. We want a wide range, do you want a wide-ranging conversation with two of Los Angeles' most interesting city officials? Join the City Programs Networking Session. Adel Hajakhalil is Executive Director and General Manager of the Bureau of Street Services, or Streets LA. That's 23,000 lane miles of streets and an urban forest of 700,000 trees. He brought cooling strategies, green infrastructure, and new metrics for street upgrades to Streets LA. He also runs a pothole program for neighborhoods. Earlier, Hajakhalil was Assistant Director of the Bureau of Sanitation. He oversaw the 2040 One Water Plan for integrating the Los Angeles water supply. Councilmember Paul Koretz is a passionate opponent of Sacramento legislation that would have destroyed single-family zoning and removed local control over developers. That was Senate Bill 50 and Senate Bill 1120. Homelessness is also on his radar. Koretz is architect of the LA 100 study to see how LADWP can move to 100% renewable energy. In addition to our two city officials, moderator Laura Myers of the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council is a person long experienced in land use issues in the city and will be a great issue, a great place for you to ask your land use questions. I think there's going to be a great discussion in city programs. That's a summary of our 7 networking sessions. If you haven't clicked on the link for one, I urge you to do so. I'm going to do that myself. Have a great time, and thank you for joining us all at the first online event of the Neighborhood Council Congress.
Thank you, Tony. It's 11:25, and we'll see you in the networking sessions. So join us there. You'll be receiving a survey so you can give us some feedback on the event and get involved in planning the next event in 2021. Thank you all very much, and thanks for being here. and we'll see you over in the networking sessions. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.